Hello everyone, I'm Siddharthan. This is the fifth topic in our complete Python course, and in this topic we are going to discuss about keywords in Python. So let's try to understand what is meant by these keywords and what are their purposes, and then let's try to do some coding in Python to see how we can use these keywords and what are their different functions. So this will be the agenda for today's video, and let's get started. So first let's try to understand about these keywords. So in Python, keywords are reserved words that have a specific meaning and function in the language. They are part of the syntax and structure of Python, and you cannot use them as names for variables, functions, or any other identifiers. So this is like a basic explanation of what keywords is, and this is like pretty much self-explanatory. So there are like some words that we can say they are kind of reserved, so that you shouldn't use that for some other purposes, like for creating variables or for a function names or something. So these are reserved words and they can be used for only that purposes, and they have a specific meaning and function. So if you think about if else, so these are like keywords in Python, and they are used only for creating these conditional statements, which we will learn later. But just think that there are some words reserved for a specific function, right? So that's about the keywords. And again, as it's mentioned here, it's part of Python itself. So it's part of syntax and structure in Python itself. And as I said earlier, so you cannot use them as the names of variables, functions, or any other identifiers. So these are like few examples, not all, but few examples of Python keywords. So we have class, and then we have this exec, assert, lambda, if else, and so on. So there are like these different keywords that we have, and we will like eventually use this in our code as well. So in the next part of this video, let's try to understand some of these keywords by just doing some coding stuff. So we won't discuss each and every one of them, as it might be a bit too complex if we are just starting to learn Python. So we will just look at some basic stuff, and along the way we will get to learn like all these individual keywords and like why they are really used. So we will eventually get there. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is print. So print statement is something like pretty much everyone knows, and this is what we have done in the previous video as well, like work with a print statement using this hello world string, where we are trying to print the hello world statement in Python. So let's try to do that here. And I'm working on my Jupyter notebook, and I hope that you have already set up your Jupyter notebook, Colab, or even your PyCharm IDE, so that you can work on this. So I'm going to convert this to a text cell. So I'm just clicking here and pressing M. So that's going to create this into a markdown cell. You can also click this drop down and you can convert this as well. So here I'm going to say I'm creating a print function. So I can put this asterisk to make it bold. Say the purpose of this is print output, and let's run this. I'll just type in some random word here. So I've typed in output. So this is a code cell, as you can see the square brackets here. So we have this the word output, right? And it is just black in color. It's like no bold or something like that. But the moment I type something like print, it's green in color. So this is for us to understand that this is a keyword or a reserved word in Python. So all these are represented in like specific colors. So that's something that you can remember. So we have this print. So I'll just like enlarge the screen so that it's easier for your eye. So I'll just say print and open and close the parenthesis, and within this I'll say Python programming. So we know that it's just going to print a specific string value or a list or something. So it's just going to print a output. So it's printing this output. So this is the purpose of the keyword print. So again, so everyone is pretty much aware of this. And in this meantime, I'll just mention another thing. So when I open parenthesis, it's not closing it automatically. And when I start a double quote, it's not closing this automatically, right? But we can actually do that. So you can go to the setting, and in the settings you will see this auto close brackets. So click that and you will see a tick mark here. So what this will do is when you open a parenthesis, it will automatically close this, and if you open double quotes, again it will close those double quotes as well. And here you can type in something so that it's a bit easier. Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to tell is you can go to this view and click on this show line numbers, and that will show the line number of your code. So this is 2, 3, and so on. So that is like another useful thing that you can turn on. So this is about the print keyword. So the next keyword that we are going to discuss is input keyword. So we will again discuss in detail about all these keywords and concepts separately, but it's just a starter video of understanding these words. So if some things it's not making sense to you, that's completely fine, because we're eventually going to get there. So you can just wait a bit for that. So here I'll say input, and input is equal to get an input from the user. So this is the purpose of input keyword. So here I can say, let's say name is the variable that we are creating. So we will also discuss about variables later. So I'll say input. As you can see, this is turned to green color now, and I'll say what's your name, and let's put a question mark here. And once the user types in their name, we are going to print hello and name. So I'm putting a comma here. So this basically like let's try to maybe run this and understand this. So the we have this input, right, and we have mentioned what's your name. So this is going to put a box here, and in this box the user can type in something, and you see this text, right, what's your name. So that's kind of displayed here. So here I can say, let's say John, and press enter. So what happens is the moment they type in John, we feed that value to this variable called as name. So now this name as the value of John, and later we are printing this with first print hello within this double quotes, and we are putting a comma. That means that just give a space and print the name, and the name is nothing but John. So that's what we are doing here. So I can run this. So the this is currently in the first line of code. The execution is there. When I type in and press enter, this name is going to take this value John, and then we are just going to print hello space name, which is John. So that's what we are seeing here, and this is the purpose of input statements. Again, we have like different complexities and advanced uses for this, but let's just stick to the simple ones for this particular video, as the focus is not on the input or print statement but just on the keywords. So that's the purpose of print statement and the input statement. So the next thing that we can discuss is a very simple if else condition. So I'll say if and else are those examples, and maybe here I'll say these are conditions. So exactly, we actually call this as conditional statements, but again, as I said, we will eventually get there. So this we are going to use check if, or basically check the condition with if, and maybe I'll put if else. And let's say we are creating a variable called as number, which is equal to 5, or we are just saying that number is equal to 5. This is something like saying a is equal to 5 or something like that. So number is equal to 5, and I'm going to say if number is greater than 0, I'm going to print the number is positive, else print the number is negative. Okay, so this is what we are printing. And whenever you want to print some text, or we call this as strings, so you put that in double quotes. So here we are putting this particular string in double quotes within this print statement, similarly here as well. And what we are doing here is we have a number value as 5, and then we are checking if this number value is greater than, if this particular value of number, that is 5, is greater than 0, we are going to say it's a positive number, so the number is positive. If this condition is satisfied, that means if number is greater than 0. If that's not the case, else if this is not the case, we are going to say the number is negative. So in this case, if you see 5 is greater than 0, so it's going to say that the number is positive. Now let's say, and once this if condition has ran, it won't go into the else condition at all. So it will just like run this one, and it will automatically skip the next one, because if you have if and else statements, only one of these things will run. So it's not possible for both of these conditions to get satisfied in this case. So only if or else will run. Now if I put the number as -5, what would happen is, maybe I'll just first run this and show this to you. So it says the number is positive because it has printed this sixth line. If I have this as -5, what would happen is it would come to this fifth line and check if this number is greater than 0. So we know that -5 is not greater than 0, and it won't execute this part. It will move to the next else condition and say that the number is negative. So this is how this works. And the syntax is that after this, if we have a condition that we need to check, in this case, which is number is greater than 0, we put a colon, and then you give this indentation, which is a 4 space space, like it's basically like 4 space or a tab space. This again, you can have 2 space or like 4 space, but like 4 space is the most conventional one, so you can just stick to that 4 space thing. And in Jupyter, right, so the moment you put a colon here and press enter, it will automatically create that indentation. You don't have to press tab, or you don't have to press space 4 times. So I'll just show this to you again. So let's say that we have this number is greater than 0. So if I just remove this and press enter, it will come to the start of this line, as you can see. Whereas if I put a colon and press enter, it will automatically create that indentation here, and it will basically, come to the next line with that indentation. And similarly, else we have a colon and it's creating an indentation and so on. So this is a we can write this. So these the main again purpose is to understand this if and else, which are keywords. As you can see, it is also green in color. So the next thing that we are going to discuss is let me do that one now. So which is a for loop. So here I'll say for loop, and the purpose of this, let me put this as for loop. Loop, which is basically for iteration. So iteration is nothing but doing some task again and again, right? Or loop is also basically mean the same thing. So here I can say for I in range 3, print let's say count comma I. Let's try to understand this. So here we have three keywords, except again excluding this print, we have three keywords, that is for, in, and range. So first let's try to understand this, maybe range. So I'll just say range of 3, and maybe I can also try printing this. So let's print this range of 3. So what this will do is it will have the values between 0 and 3. But the key thing here is the indexing in Python start with 0, so the values are nothing but 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? But when we mention 3, it would stop before this 3. Or in other words, what this 3 represents is the first three numbers, and the first three numbers are 0, 1, and 2. As I said, the indexing, we call that as indexing, or basically how your serial number starts, you can think like that. And in Python it starts with 0 and not with 1. And when I say range 3, it's not up to the number 3, it's up to 3 numbers. As in Python we start with 0, the range 3 basically has 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so that's what this is going to take. And let's say this range 3 has three values, 0 and until like the third number, which is 2. And here we are saying for I in range of 3, print that I. So what happens is this for loop is going to do a particular thing again and again. So what's that going to do is print this I. And what this I is nothing but 0, 1, and 2. Or maybe I'll just take a simple example. So this may be bit hard for you to understand. So I'll say for I in range 3, print just hello. This may be slightly easier. So what we are doing is for I in range 3. So the first time this runs, I takes the value of 0, right? And the next time it runs, I takes the value of 2. And the last time it would take the value of 2. So it's basically I value would be 0 first, and then it would be 1, and then it would be 2. So now what we are doing is we are using this range to dictate how many times the for loop should run. So in this case, the range is 3. That means it should run for 3 times. 0th time, first time, and second time. So basically 3 times. So the 3 times we are printing hello. So instead of typing print hello 3 times, we are just printing this 3 times using this for loop. Just basically to reduce the number of lines we can, we have to write. So maybe I'll show you. So let's say that we want to print this 3 times, so I can just do this, right? But what if I have to print this 100 times? So what I'll do is I'll just change this number to 100, and that's going to print allow 100 times. So that's the purpose of for loop, which is basically to do a particular task again and again. And the key thing is I in range. When I say I in range, it's going to take these values of 0, 1, and 2. I can also print the values of I as well for you to see. And here I'll just print some empty, daughter lines. Let's run this. So let's understand this. So for I in range of 3, first we print I. So for the first time, the I takes the value of 0 from here, and then it would print this hello, and it would print this daughter line. So this is the first iteration, or the first time this task is running. The next time this I would take the second value, that is 1, and it would print one allow and this dot lines, and then finally it would take the value to allow and three dot lines. So this is how this particular for loop works. So for now, just understand this for and range. The other things we can maybe like discuss later as well. So yeah, so we have 0, 1 and 2. So again, we have like separate section for loops. So that's why I just wanted to stick to a very basic version of this for loop. Just understand that for loop is used to do a specific task again and again. It's basically it's going to iterate something again and again. And the other version that we have is a while loop, but maybe we can just get to that later, as I said. So that's like maybe I can just mention this here. So while is another loop, but we will eventually get there. So while is also a keyword. So if I just type in here, as you can see, it's kind of green in color, but we will, as I said, we will get there. So that's one example, and there is another keyword that we can discuss called as define. So def, which basically stands for define, or it's for creating a function. We'll call this as function again. So this is like a slightly advanced topic for a absolute beginner, but again it's like simple stuff. I'll just write a very simple function here. So I'll say define, say allow, and put a colon here and say print hello world. Okay, so this is what we are going to run. So I'll run this, and we are not printing this or something. So we have def, that means define, say hello, print hello world. So this is what we call as a function. So when you put this def keyword, that's going to create a function, and the name of the function is what you have mentioned here. So this say hello, which looks blue in color now, is the name of the function that we are creating using this define function. And whenever this say hello function is called, it's going to print this hello world text. Okay, so that's what this particular function does. So now I can go ahead and say hello. That's going to call this function or basically execute whatever is present within this function. So let's run this. So it says hello world, and the importance of or the use of function is that you don't have to again type this print hello world again and again. So you can just like sorry, not print hello, you can just copy this say hello function name, and you can run it any number of times. So that's going to call that function and execute like whatever lines present here. This is simple stuff of printing, but in some cases, let's say that we have to do a very large calculation that involves like, let's say 100 lines of code or some 10 lines of code. You don't want to write that 10 line of code again and again. So what we do there is we put that code in this function and call that function that's going to do that calculation again and again, no matter how many times you change the number. So that's like the basic basis of that function is. So you write that code once and you can utilize that code for several number of times. So that's about this use of this function, and the keyword that we use here is def, and whatever you put next to that def will become the name of that function. And we have this parenthesis. Sometimes it can take these parameters, so we call that as parameter. Some values it takes, but again let's discuss that later. And you put a colon and you put some code within that. So now let's so I think like you have understood the purpose of this define keyword now, which is basically a function. So now let's discuss like another variation of this, which is return. So here I'll say return, and this will be returns output from a function. Let's understand this. So return is actually a part of the function itself. So here I'll say define add two numbers. So here we are going to add two numbers, and it's going to take, let's say, two values a and b. So whenever we are calling this function, so here we didn't pass anything, but in this function we have to pass two numbers, that is a and b. And then we are going to say sum is equal to a plus b, and return a plus b, sorry, return sum. Let's try to understand this. So here again we are using the keyword define. So we are not printing anything as in the previous step, rather we are adding the two numbers. So we have sum of a plus b, So the user passes in two values. It can be, let's say, 5 and another 5, or 5 and 10. So that's added to 15. So we take these two numbers, add it, and return that number. So let's run this. So this is not going to output anything. This is just like defining it. We are not using that. We are just like defining it. So now I can say C is equal to add two numbers, and within that I can pass two numbers. Let's say 5 comma 10, and then I can print this C. So it says 15. So what happens is when I call this add two numbers and pass in this two parameters of 5 and 10, so this A now will take the value of 5 and B will take the value of 10. And those two values are added here and stored in the variable called as sum. And then we are returning this sum. And this returned sum is stored in this variable called as C. Okay. And then we finally are printing C. I hope this is simple enough to understand. It's basically like we're just doing some calculation within this add two numbers function and returning that value to the variable that we are creating here. So C is equal to add two numbers, that reference to this function, add the two given numbers and return this sum. And that returned value is nothing but C, which is kind of stored in the C alphabet, and we are printing it. And the value is 15. So this is about the return that we would have in function. So these are like some of the basic keywords. So we have print, input, if else, for loop, while, define, return, and so on. And again, apart from this, we also have other keywords as well. So we have this true, which is means again what it means, it's true. And we also have false. So this is what we call as boolean. And apart from this, we also have this is like another keywords. Here maybe I'll just mention the other keywords that you have, which we will again eventually get there. So I'll say yes. In we have already seen in for, but we can also use this in a different way. So we also have something called as none. These are like some examples. So in the coding that we would later do, in some of the part we will use these keywords as well. So maybe I'll just put these in bold. Again, this is not all, just like some of the important keywords that we would encounter. So I'll just put this in pointers, right? Okay, so we have is, in, none, and so on. So again, there are a lot more, but just like few important, or like the ones that we frequently use are these ones. So we have print, input, if else, range, for, while. So while also I've mentioned it. So we have while, define, return, and so on. So these are some of these stuff. So you can also do your research, or like what are all other keywords that you have, and maybe you can do that as an assignment or something. And the one thing that you can remember is, like, whenever you are using that keyword, it's going to be kind of highlighted in the Jupyter notebook. It's highlighted in green in color. If you're using PyCharm or VS Code, it would be highlighted in a different color, but it would definitely be highlighted. So I hope everyone understood all the things that we have discussed here, and I'll see you in the next upload. Thank you from my side.